The crystalline palace of the empire stretched across the horizon like a frozen waterfall. Its towers caught the light of 3 suns and scattered it into 1,000 colors. Inside the throne room, Queen sat on her silver chair and watched the humans arrive. She was tall even for her species. Her skin shimmered like polished metal, and patterns of light moved beneath its surface. These patterns showed her emotions, though she had learned to control them well. Right now, they barely flickered. She did not want anyone to know what she truly felt about this arrangement. The humans were small. That was the first thing everyone noticed. The guards stood nearly 8 feet tall, but the human delegation barely reached their shoulders. They wore strange uniforms made of dark fabric, nothing like the flowing robes of proper civilization. They walked differently too, with quick, efficient steps instead of the gliding grace her people preferred. One human stepped forward from the group. He bowed in the manner, his movements surprisingly correct. This was the one Earth had chosen to marry their queen. Studied him carefully. He had dark hair and dark eyes, and his face showed nothing of what he thought. His clothing was simpler than the others, just a plain black uniform with a single silver pin on the collar. "Your Majesty," he said, imperfectly accented, "I am honored by this union between our peoples." Inclined her head slightly. At least he had bothered to learn the language. That was more than she expected. "Welcome to the of Earth. Our alliance will bring prosperity to both our nations." The words were formal and empty. Everyone in the room knew the truth. Earth needed the Empire's protection and technology. They needed access to Earth's unique biological resources, substances that existed nowhere else in the known galaxy. This marriage was a contract, nothing more. General stood beside the throne, her hand resting on her plasma blade. She made no effort to hide the contempt in her glowing eyes. After the humans left the throne room, she spoke freely. "This is madness, my queen. Binding yourself to such a creature. They are barely more advanced than animals." "They have achieved faster-than-light travel," reminded her. "That is no small accomplishment. With help from the traders, we all know this. Left alone, they would still be crawling around their single planet." Its markings pulsed orange with disgust. "And now one of them will share your bed, your throne, your secrets. I do not trust this." Its own markings flared briefly, a sign of irritation. "Your trust is not required. The Council has voted. Earth's resources are too valuable to ignore. This alliance must be sealed properly." "Then let it be sealed with trade agreements and military pacts. Why give them such honor? Why marriage?" "Because humans value such symbols. They are an emotional species. This gesture will bind them to us more surely than any document." Stood and walked to the great window. Beyond it, the capital city spread out in geometric perfection. One human in the palace is a small price to pay for an entire planet's loyalty. Said nothing more, but her silence was heavy with disapproval. The wedding took place 3 days later. It was a grand ceremony attended by nobles from across the empire. Wore traditional armor made of living crystal that shifted colors with her breathing. Wore formal robes that looked too large on his smaller frame. They spoke the ancient vows, their voices echoing in the great hall. When it was done, they were married. Felt nothing except a sense of duty fulfilled. She looked at and saw a stranger who would now share her life. He looked back at her with those dark, unreadable eyes and nodded once, as if confirming some private thought. The feast afterward was elaborate. The nobility made polite conversation with the human, asking questions about Earth with barely concealed condescension. Answered each question patiently, never showing offense at their tone. Watched him from across the room and wondered if he was simply too naive to notice the insults, or if he was choosing to ignore them. That night they were escorted to the royal quarters. The chambers had been modified slightly to accommodate human needs: lower furniture, warmer temperature controls, different lighting. Looked around the vast space and set down his single bag of belongings. "You may take the southern wing," said, gesturing to a set of doors. "I will keep the northern rooms. We need not pretend this arrangement is anything but political." "As you wish, Your Majesty." His voice held no emotion, no disappointment or relief. "You may call me when we are alone. We are married now, whatever that means to both our peoples." He repeated, as if testing the sound. "Then you should call me just." She nodded and retreated to her rooms. Through the walls, she could hear him moving about quietly, unpacking his few possessions. She wondered what he had brought from Earth, what small pieces of home he carried with him to this alien place. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Ruled her empire as she always had, attending council meetings and military briefings, managing disputes and trade negotiations. Was present at formal events when required, standing beside her throne in silence. Otherwise, he kept to himself. She noticed that he spent most of his time in the palace archives. The record keepers reported that he was studying history and technology with remarkable focus. He asked questions about their engineering, their ship designs, their communication systems. The archivists found him polite and genuinely curious, unlike most visitors who only pretended interest in such things. Occasionally, would see him in the gardens or the observation halls, always alone, always watching everything with quiet attention. He learned the palace layout within a week. He memorized the names and faces of every guard and servant. He understood the daily rhythms of court life faster than some nobles who had lived there for years. It puzzled her. He did not act like a defeated man sent into exile for his planet's benefit. He acted like someone gathering information, learning the terrain, preparing for something. But preparing for what? He had no power here, no authority beyond his title as royal consort. He was decoration, a symbol of alliance, nothing more. General continued to express her doubts openly. At council meetings, she would speak as if were not present, dismissing humanity as weak and untested. Other military commanders agreed with her. They had fought wars for thousands of years. They had conquered star systems and crushed empires. What could these newcomers possibly teach them about strength? Never responded to these provocations. He simply sat in his designated seat and listened, his face showing nothing. Told herself that the arrangement was working well enough. The marriage had satisfied Earth's government and secured the resource agreements they needed. That her husband was essentially a stranger living in her home was irrelevant. That she sometimes caught him watching her with an expression she could not read was merely curiosity. That he seemed to be studying everything, and everyone with systematic thoroughness was just his way of adapting to a new culture. She did not yet understand that she had married someone far more dangerous and capable than she imagined. That revelation would come later, when everything was falling apart and she had nowhere else to turn. For now, Queen ruled her empire and ignored the quiet human who shared her palace and her name, never suspecting that he would soon save everything she had ever known. 3 months passed since the wedding, and the distance between and remained as wide as the space between their worlds. They shared quarters but lived separate lives. They appeared together at state functions, standing side by side while saying nothing of substance to each other. The nobles had stopped gossiping about the strange marriage. It was simply accepted now, another oddity of political necessity. Continued his studies in the archives. He had moved beyond basic history and was now deep into technical specifications of military systems. The head archivist, an elderly scholar named, had grown fond of the curious human. She told that had a remarkable mind for patterns and systems. He could look at a ship design and immediately understand its strengths and vulnerabilities. He asked questions that even experienced engineers had never considered. He sees things differently than we do, explained during one of his visits to the archives. He approaches problems from angles we would never think to explore. It is quite fascinating. Found that day among the holographic displays, studying fleet formation diagrams from the border wars. He looked up when she approached, waiting politely for her to speak first. You spend considerable time studying military matters, she observed. I find it interesting. Your people have a long history of warfare. There is much to learn from it. You are a soldier yourself. She realized she knew almost nothing about his background beyond his name and diplomatic title. I was an engineer in Earth's defense forces. I specialized in tactical systems and strategic planning. He gestured at the hologram showing a famous battle. This engagement at the nebula is remarkable. Your admiral used the nebula's radiation to mask ship movements. Brilliant improvisation under pressure. Looked at the display with new interest. She had studied this battle in her military training, but had never heard someone describe it with such appreciation. The admiral died in that battle. The victory cost us half the fleet. Many great victories are also tragedies. That does not make the strategy less worthy of study. Dimmed the hologram and turned to face her fully. May I ask you something directly? She felt surprised by the question. You may. Why did you agree to marry me if you had no intention of trusting me with anything meaningful? The question struck her like a physical blow. Her markings flared bright blue, showing her shock before she could control them. That is a bold thing to ask your queen. We are alone here. You asked me to use your name when we are private, so I am asking, not the queen, why you seem to regret this arrangement. She wanted to deny it to deflect with royal authority, but something in his directness demanded honesty in return. I needed the alliance with Earth. Your government required marriage as proof of commitment. I gave them what they asked for, but trust must be earned, and you have had no opportunity to earn it. Because you give me no opportunities, he said quietly. I am kept away from anything important. I attend councils but am never consulted. I offer observations and they are dismissed without consideration. I am treated as decoration, and so I remain decorative. You are human. You come from a world that discovered faster-than-light travel only 5 years ago. We have been a spacefaring civilization for 12,000 years. What would you have me trust you with? Was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. I understand. From your perspective, we are children playing with tools we barely understand. Perhaps that is even true, but children can still see things that adults miss, precisely because they are not limited by old assumptions. Before could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Red light flooded the archive chamber. Her communication device activated immediately, projecting General's face in miniature. My queen, we have reports of an attack on the border colony at Prime. Long-range sensors detected ships in the system. By the time our patrol responded, half the colony was destroyed. Felt ice spread through her veins. The Dominion had been aggressive lately, but this was different. This was open warfare. Casualties. Unknown. Communications were cut off mid-transmission. We are sending a battle group to investigate, but it will take 3 days to reach them. Convene the War Council immediately. I will be there shortly. Ended the communication and turned to leave. She had taken only a few steps when she realized was following her. You need not attend. This is a military matter. I am your consort. If we are at war, I should be present. She wanted to argue but had no time. Come then, but do not interfere. The War Council chamber was chaos when they arrived. Holographic displays showed troop movements, supply lines, defensive positions. Generals and admirals argued over response strategies. General's markings blazed red with battle fury as she pounded the table. We must respond with overwhelming force. Send 3 fleets to space and burn their colony worlds. Show them the cost of attacking citizens. That would leave our core systems vulnerable, Admiral countered. They are not fools. This attack may be bait to draw our forces away from more valuable targets. The argument continued, voices rising. Listened to all of them, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders. They wanted her decision, her judgment, and she did not know what to do. They had never been this bold before. What had changed? Stood against the wall, apart from the table where the military leaders gathered, saw him studying the tactical displays with intense focus. His eyes moved rapidly, tracking fleet positions and supply routes. Then he stepped forward just slightly, as if about to speak. General noticed immediately. The human wishes to add something. Perhaps Earth has secret knowledge of warfare it would like to share. The words dripped with sarcasm. Several officers chuckled. The expression did not change. I only wish to observe that the supply lines seem extended. The attack on Prime is far from their nearest staging ground. They would need significant logistical support to sustain operations in that region. Thank you for that analysis, said with false courtesy. Our academy students learn such basics in their first year. Do you have any insights we have not already considered? Met her gaze calmly. If their supply lines are extended, they are vulnerable to disruption. Rather than attacking their colonies directly, you might consider targeting their logistics. Destroy their supply convoys, cut off their fuel sources, force them to withdraw without large-scale fleet engagement. Coward's tactics, snapped. The do not hide and raid like pirates. We face our enemies directly with honor. Honor does not rebuild destroyed colonies, said quietly, and dead soldiers cannot celebrate their honor. The room went absolutely silent. No one spoke to General that way. Her markings blazed so bright they hurt to look at. She took a step toward, her hand moving toward her blade. Enough! His voice cut through the tension like a knife. General, compose yourself. Your suggestion is noted, but we have our own methods. This council is dismissed. I will announce my decision within the hour. The officers filed out, shooting one last furious look at the human. When they were alone, turned to. You made a powerful enemy just now. I know, but she was about to commit your forces to a strategy that would cost thousands of lives unnecessarily. You do not know that. You are not a military commander. You are an engineer who has read some history files. Yes, that is all I am. He bowed formally, the gesture perfect and cold. Forgive my presumption, Your Majesty. It will not happen again. He left before she could respond. Stood alone in the War Council chamber, surrounded by holographic displays of military might, and felt a strange sensation she could not quite name. It might have been doubt, or it might have been the first hint of respect. That night she found in the observatory, staring out at the stars. She approached quietly and stood beside him. I am sending 2 fleets to reinforce our border, she said, and a small task force to harass supply lines, as you suggested. I will not commit to full attack until we understand their true intentions. That seems wise. Do not mistake this for acceptance of your counsel. I am hedging my strategy, nothing more. Of course. They stood in silence, watching distant stars wheel overhead. Finally, asked the question that had been bothering her. Why did you speak today? You knew you would be mocked and dismissed. Why risk humiliation? Continued looking at the stars. Because people were going to die, and I thought I saw a way to save some of them. Whether anyone listened was less important than trying to help. That is either very brave or very foolish. Possibly both. He finally looked at her. You asked earlier why you should trust me. I cannot answer that. Trust is earned through actions, not words. But I can promise you this. I will always try to help whether you trust me or not. Because I believe in the alliance between our peoples, even if you do not believe in me. Felt her markings shift to a color she rarely showed. A deep purple that indicated respect and uncertainty mixed together. She left without responding because she did not know what to say. The next morning brought news from the border. More attacks, more colonies under siege. The War Council reconvened, and this time the arguments were more desperate. They were moving faster than expected, striking with precision and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. And in the back of her mind, kept hearing's quiet voice suggesting strategies her generals refused to consider. She began to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake, not in marrying him, but in refusing to see him clearly. The war was coming closer. Soon, very soon, she would have no choice but to trust him or watch everything fall apart. She did not yet know which option frightened her more. The war came faster than anyone expected. For 2 weeks, the Dominion had been probing border defenses and attacking small colonies. The military responded with standard defensive postures, sending reinforcement fleets and establishing patrol routes. General continued to push for aggressive retaliation, but held back, waiting to understand the enemy's true strategy. She should have trusted her instincts. She should have acted sooner. The attack began in the early morning cycle, when most of the palace still slept. Alarm systems screamed throughout the building, jolting everyone awake. Ran from her chambers, still fastening her armor, her markings blazing white with shock and fear. The main in the command center showed something impossible. Hundreds of warships filled the orbital space above the. They had appeared without warning, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation like a swarm of metallic insects. The surprise was total and complete. "How did they get through our sensor network?" Admiral demanded, her voice shaking. "We should have had hours of warning." "They did not come through normal space," the sensor officer reported, his markings flickering with terror. "They used some kind of masked hyperspace entry, something we have never seen before. Our systems did not detect them until they were already here." General was already snapping orders, directing defensive batteries and scrambling fighter squadrons, but could see the tactical display clearly enough. They had positioned themselves perfectly to strike at vulnerable points. This was not a raid. This was an invasion designed to destroy them completely. "Status of our fleet," demanded. "Scattered across 3 systems, responding to the border attacks. The main battle group is 4 days away at best speed. We have perhaps 20 warships in close orbit and 300 fighters. Against this," Admiral gestured at the display where red enemy markers far outnumbered their blue defenders. "We cannot win this fight." "Then we do not fight, we evacuate." General's voice was hard. "Get the royal family to the escape ships. We will hold them as long as possible." "And abandon 15 billion citizens," felt cold spreading through her entire body. "No, there must be another way." "There is no other way. We are outnumbered 20-1. Our orbital platforms are already falling. Look." The screens showed it happening in real time. The great defense platforms that had guarded them for 1,000 years were being torn apart by concentrated fire. Explosions blossomed in orbit like deadly flowers. Debris rained down toward the atmosphere, burning bright as it fell. The first troop carriers began their descent. 30 massive ships breaking away from the main fleet, heading straight for the capital city. Once they landed, ground forces would pour out and the slaughter would begin. The palace shields could hold for a time, but not forever. Stood frozen, her mind racing through scenarios and finding no solutions. Everything she had trained for, all her years of military education, offered nothing useful. They were going to lose. Her empire, her people, everything would fall. "Your Majesty," a quiet voice spoke behind her. She turned to see standing in the entrance to the command center. He wore simple black clothing, the same uniform he had arrived in months ago. In the chaos of armored generals and panicking officers, he looked impossibly small and calm. "Not now," said sharply. "You need to get to the evacuation ships with the other civilians. I need to speak with you, privately, please." His dark eyes were intense, urgent in a way she had never seen before. "I do not have time for." "You do not have time to refuse me." He said it without raising his voice, but something in his tone cut through her panic. "Please, trust me, just this once." Every instinct told her to dismiss him and focus on the military crisis. But something deeper, some intuition she did not fully understand, made her nod. She followed him to a side chamber, leaving General to continue coordinating the defense. The moment the door closed, spoke quickly and clearly. I can save the planet, but you have to give me access to the planetary defense network and command authority over all automated systems. Stared at him. What are you talking about? I have been studying your defense systems for 3 months. I know how they work, how they connect, what their capabilities are. I also know that you are not using them correctly. The fight with honor and preferred direct engagement, but your technology was built for strategic warfare. You have weapons and systems you have forgotten how to use properly. You are an engineer, not a military commander. You want me to give you control of our most critical systems during our darkest moment. That is insane. Yes, he stepped closer, his expression absolutely serious. It is insane, but so is dying with honor when you could live without it. I can stop those troop carriers. I can hurt the fleet badly enough to force a retreat, but only if you let me act now before they establish ground positions. Felt her markings flashing through colors too quickly to control: doubt, fear, desperation, and something else. A tiny spark of hope that she did not want to acknowledge. If you fail, we lose everything. If I give control to you and you are wrong, the empire falls and it is my fault. If you do not give control to me, the empire falls anyway and it is still your fault. His voice softened slightly. You married me for an alliance. Let me show you what humanity brings to that alliance. Let me help you. Behind them, another explosion shook the palace. Time was running out. The troop carriers would enter the atmosphere in minutes. Looked at this quiet human who had spent 3 months studying while everyone dismissed him as useless decoration. She thought about his careful questions in the archives, his attention to detail, the way he saw patterns others missed. She made her decision. Come with me. She strode back into the command center with behind her. General looked up, confusion and anger warring on her marked face. Your Majesty, what is? Grant full access to the planetary defense network, commanded. Give him command authority over all automated systems, weapons platforms, and shield generators. Do it now. The command center went silent. Everyone stared at her as if she had lost her mind. General's markings went completely black with shock. You cannot be serious. Give control to the human, now. I am ordering it. Comply immediately or be removed from command. For a moment looked ready to refuse. Her hand moved toward her blade. Then she saw something in his face that made her back down. With visible reluctance, she nodded to the technical officers. Grant him access. All of you heard the Queen. Moved to the main command console. His fingers flew across the holographic controls with practiced precision. Screens lit up around him showing system after system coming online under his authority. The officers watched in horrified fascination as this small human took control of weapons that could destroy cities. Troop carriers entering atmosphere, a sensor officer reported. 30 seconds to defensive perimeter. Did not look up from his work. His hands moved faster, pulling up interface after interface. He was reconfiguring systems on the fly, changing power allocations, linking weapons that had never been designed to work together. What is he doing? Admiral whispered. I do not know, admitted. She watched work and felt her heart racing. She had just bet everything on this one human. If he failed, she had doomed them all. Carriers in atmosphere, the sensor officer said. They are heading straight for the capital. Impact in 90 seconds. His fingers stopped moving. He looked up at the main display, studying the carrier positions. Then he pressed a single control. Engaging. The palace shield suddenly dropped. Everyone in the command center gasped. General screamed in fury. What are you doing? We are defenseless. Watch said calmly. The power from the palace shields had been rerouted. All across the capital city, ancient weapon systems that had been dormant for centuries suddenly came alive. Automated defense turrets that the current generation did not even know existed rose from hidden positions. Shield generators that normally protected individual buildings synchronized in a way they were never designed for, creating interlocking fields of energy. The troop carriers flew into what had transformed into a perfectly designed killing field. Weapons fire came from every direction at once, not random shooting but precisely calculated patterns that overlapped and concentrated force. The carrier's shields tried to compensate, but they could not adapt fast enough. The first carrier exploded in midair, raining burning debris across an empty field outside the city. The second and third followed within seconds. He destroyed 3 carriers, someone whispered in shock. Was already adjusting, tracking the remaining carriers as they tried to scatter. He triggered another sequence, and the shield generators pulsed in coordinated waves. The energy fields intersected and created destructive interference patterns that tore at the hull integrity of anything caught between them. 2 more carriers broke apart, their structures simply unable to withstand the conflicting forces. General stared at the displays. That technique is from the first expansion era. We stopped using it because it was considered too brutal. It is very effective though, said, still working. 25 carriers left. They are attempting to climb back to orbit. I need your fighters to herd them toward coordinates I am sending now. Admiral looked at the Queen, nodded. Do as he says. The fighters moved into position, not attacking but simply threatening. The carriers adjusted course to avoid them, moving exactly where needed them to go. Above the capital, the oldest defense platform still functioned, a massive weapons array built in the Empire's earliest days. It had not fired in 300 years. Brought it online and targeted the grouped carriers with every weapon system it possessed. The destruction was absolute. The remaining troop carriers vanished in overlapping explosions that lit up the sky like a second sun. The ground forces that would have invaded the capital were now nothing but scattered atoms in the upper atmosphere. The command center erupted in shocked celebration, but was not finished. His attention turned to the main fleet still in orbit. The command ship was visible on the displays, a massive vessel hovering above the planet like a dark moon. That is the fleet commander's ship, General said. If we could destroy it, the invasion might collapse. Its shields are too strong, Admiral countered. We would need to hit it with everything we have, and we do not have enough firepower. Studied the readouts, his expression calculating. The shields are strong, but they are also old technology. I have been watching their frequency patterns. They cycle through defensive configurations on a predictable rotation. Meaning, asked. Meaning if we hit them at exactly the right moment with perfectly synchronized fire from every available weapon, we can overload the shield generators before they can adjust. He looked up at, but it requires risking everything. If the timing is off even slightly, we waste our ammunition and accomplish nothing. Looked at the command ship, looked at, made her choice. Do it. He coordinated every weapon system on the planet and in near orbit. Orbital platforms, ground batteries, ship-mounted weapons, everything that could fire was aimed at a single target. He calculated trajectories, compensated for orbital mechanics, adjusted for the shield rotation cycle. Firing in 3, 2, 1, now. Every weapon fired at once. The combined firepower of an entire planet focused on a single point. The command ship's shields held for exactly 2 seconds before failing catastrophically. Without shields, the ship's hull was exposed to the full force of the attack. The command ship broke apart in orbit, its destruction sending shockwaves through the fleet. Without leadership, without their troop carriers, facing a defense that had just demonstrated terrifying effectiveness, the fleet began to retreat. Within 10 minutes, the invasion was over. The command center was absolute chaos now, officers shouting in celebration, embrace each other, their markings blazing with joy and relief. Stood still, watching step back from the controls. He looked exhausted but calm, as if he had just finished a routine task instead of saving an entire civilization. She walked over to him. Everyone else fell silent, watching their queen and the human who had just accomplished the impossible. "You saved us," she said quietly. "I did my job," he replied. "The job you finally let me do." General approached, her expression complex. She stared at for a long moment, then did something shocking. She bowed, a deep bow of respect given only to honored warriors. "I was wrong about you," she said. "I am sorry." "Return the bow. You were protecting your people. That is never wrong. We simply fight differently." Felt something shift inside her chest. For 3 months she had kept this human at a distance, never seeing what he truly was. She had married a stranger and refused to know him. Now, covered in the reflected glow of burning ships, she finally understood what Earth had sent her. Not a decoration, not a political token, a partner, if she was wise enough to treat him as one. "Come with me," she said to. "We need to talk, really talk for the first time." He nodded and followed her from the command center. Behind them, the officers began the work of securing the planet and tending to casualties. The invasion had been stopped, but the war was far from over. And Queen had finally learned that underestimating someone was the most dangerous mistake a leader could make. Took to the observatory, the same place they had spoken weeks before. The space felt different now. Through the transparent dome, they could see debris still burning in orbit, the remains of ships forming temporary constellations of destruction. It was beautiful and terrible at once. "Sit with me," said, gesturing to one of the observation benches. Her markings had finally settled into a steady blue color, showing contemplation and uncertainty. "I need to understand what just happened." Sat, leaving respectful distance between them. He looked tired now that the immediate crisis had passed. There were dark circles under his eyes that she had never noticed before. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. How you knew what to do. How you learned our systems well enough to use them better than our own military. How you saw patterns and possibilities that none of us recognized." She paused, her markings flickering. "How I failed to see you clearly for 3 months." "You did not fail. You made reasonable assumptions based on your experience. Humans are new to galactic civilization. We have limited military history in space. By any objective measure, we are inexperienced compared to the—" He looked out at the stars. "But inexperience can be an advantage sometimes." "How?" "Because we have no traditions binding us to old methods. When I studied your military history, I saw brilliance and courage. But I also saw patterns, repeated strategies that work most of the time but become predictable. The value honor in combat, direct engagement, showing strength openly. These are good values, but they also limit tactical flexibility." Felt her markings pulse orange, a sign of irritation, but she kept her voice calm. "You think our values make us weak?" "No, I think your values make you strong in most situations. But they understood those values and planned around them. They knew how you would respond to border attacks. They knew you would commit fleets to defensive positions. They used your predictability against you." "And humans are not predictable." Smiled slightly, a sad expression. "Humans are very predictable about one thing: we survive. When Earth had its final global war, we nearly destroyed ourselves completely. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, chemical warfare, everything we could create to kill each other. We came so close to extinction that for a time, scientists believed we would not make it another decade." "But you did survive." "Yes, because we learned something important. When survival is the only goal that matters, honor becomes optional, fairness becomes optional, fighting cleanly becomes optional. All that matters is living to see another day." He turned to face her directly. "The fight beautifully. Humans fight to win." Absorbed this, feeling uncomfortable with the truth in his words. "So the weapons you used, the tactics, they are human methods." "Some of them. The synchronized shield interference was actually an old technique that your people abandoned because it caused too much collateral damage. I just recognized that right now, damaging the enemy was more important than minimizing destruction. The targeting calculations were based on human military doctrine. We call it overwhelming force at the decisive point. Instead of spreading your firepower across multiple targets, concentrate everything on the most critical threat. The command ship. Yes, take out leadership and the rest often falls apart. It is not always true, but it was worth the risk. He looked down at his hands. I spent 3 months studying everything I could access. Your technology, your history, your military doctrine. I knew that eventually there would be a crisis, and when it came, I wanted to be ready to help. I just did not expect it to come so soon or so close to the... Felt something painful in her chest, an emotion she rarely acknowledged. Shame. You prepared to save us while we treated you with contempt. Not contempt, caution, there is a difference. He met her eyes. You had no reason to trust me initially. Trust must be earned, but you also gave me no opportunity to earn it. That was the problem. And now you let me help when everything was falling apart. That took courage. Most rulers would rather lose with familiar methods than risk winning with something unknown. He paused, then added quietly, "You were willing to look weak in front of your generals by trusting a human. That is true strength." She felt her markings shift to purple, that rare color indicating respect and uncertainty mixed together. No one had ever spoken to her quite this way before. They were formal and hierarchical. Even her closest advisors maintained careful distance, but spoke to her like an equal, despite their difference in rank and species. What you did today, with the defense systems and the weapons coordination, our military academy trains officers for years to reach that level of tactical thinking. You did it after 3 months of independent study. I had advantages. I came in with no assumptions about how things should be done. And human military training emphasizes adaptability. We train people to think creatively under pressure because we do not have the resources or technology to overpower our problems. We have to outsmart them instead. Is this what all humans are like? She asked it with genuine curiosity. Are all of you this capable? Laughed, a soft sound she had never heard from him before. No, not at all. Humans are as varied as any species. Many of us are not particularly clever or brave, but our military doctrine, our approach to warfare, that is something we developed collectively over centuries of conflict. I am just one person who learned those lessons well. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the cleanup operations beginning in orbit. Ships moved through debris fields, searching for survivors and securing the area. The immediate danger had passed, but everyone knew they would return eventually. They will come back, said, voicing the thought. With more ships, better planning. Today was a victory but not an ending. I know, and next time they will expect the tactics we use today. We cannot rely on the same strategies twice. She looked at him carefully. If you want my help, if you are willing to truly make me your partner in this, not just in title but in practice. He held her gaze steadily. I meant what I said before. I believe in the alliance between our peoples. I think together, humans, and could be stronger than either species alone. But that only works if both sides contribute, if both sides are valued. Felt the weight of decision pressing on her. She could return to the old ways, thank for his service but keep him at distance. Or she could do something radical, something that would shock her military and possibly anger her nobles. She made her choice. Tomorrow I will announce a new command structure. The military will be reorganized to integrate human tactical doctrine and strategic thinking. You will work directly with General and Admiral to develop new defensive strategies and training protocols. She watched his reaction carefully. This is not ceremonial. I am giving you real authority and real responsibility. Can you handle that? Yes, no hesitation, no false humility, just confidence. Good, because the moment I make this announcement, you will have enemies. Many will resist having a human in such a position. They will question your decisions, challenge your authority, perhaps even work to undermine you. I can handle that too, he smiled slightly. I have been handling it for 3 months already. Felt her markings shift to a warm gold color, indicating approval in something else, something that felt almost like affection. You have been more patient than I deserved. You have been more brave than you realize. Change is difficult, especially for those in power. You could have refused my help today. You could have held onto your pride and let the traditional methods fail. Instead, you chose to adapt. That is true leadership. She reached out and took his hand. It was smaller than hers, warmer, unmistakably alien. But it was also the hand of someone who had saved her world and asked for nothing in return except the chance to keep helping. I want this to be real, she said quietly. Not just a political arrangement, not just a military partnership. I want to know you. I want to understand where you come from and what you think and what you hope for. I have been your queen for 3 months. Perhaps it is time I tried being your wife as well. His expression softened. I would like that. Though I should warn you, I am not very interesting outside of military theory and engineering. I spend too much time reading technical manuals. I spend too much time in council meetings arguing about trade regulations. Perhaps we are both too serious for our own good. They smiled at each other, and something that had been frozen between them began to thaw. It was not love, not yet. But it was the beginning of understanding, the first real connection after months of careful distance. A communication alert interrupted the moment. General's face appeared in holographic form, her markings still showing excitement from the battle. Your Majesty, we are receiving communication from the Earth government. They heard about the attack and want to know if you need assistance. They are offering to send military advisors and defense specialists. Looked at, who nodded slightly. Tell them we accept their offer, and inform them that their representative here has performed beyond all expectations. Earth should be proud of him. His expression shifted to something that might have been respect. I will tell them, my queen, and I will tell them that we are grateful for their alliance, truly grateful. The communication ended, turned back to, your people will want to know you are safe. They will also want a detailed report of everything that happened. Earth's military will want to study this battle extensively. Do I have your permission to share information about systems with them? You have my permission to share anything you think will help both our peoples survive what is coming. No more secrets between allies. Stood and bowed formally, but this time when he straightened, he held out his hand in the human gesture of partnership. Took it, and they shook hands in the human way, sealing an agreement between equals. We have much work to do, she said. They will not accept this defeat quietly. They will return and we must be ready. Then we will be ready, together. She watched him leave the observatory, this quiet human who had turned out to be so much more than anyone expected. The palace was already buzzing with news of what had happened. By tomorrow, the entire empire would know how a human saved there. Queen looked out at the stars and felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. Real, genuine hope that they could survive what was coming. Not because they were invincible, but because they had finally learned to accept help from an unexpected source. She touched her chest, where humans supposedly kept their hearts. Her markings glowed a soft pink, a color that indicated warmth and beginning affection. It was embarrassing how clearly her emotions showed, but for once she did not try to hide them. The alliance between and humanity had been sealed with a political marriage. But perhaps, just perhaps, it could become something more. Something based on mutual respect, genuine partnership, and the kind of trust that only comes from facing destruction together and surviving. The war was far from over, but for the first time since it began, believed they could win it. The days following the invasion were busy beyond measure. The palace transformed from a place of ceremony into a military command center. Every room seemed filled with officers, engineers, and strategists working around the clock to prepare for the next attack everyone knew was coming. Kept her word. The morning after the battle, she made her announcement to the full council, would be given official military authority, and would work directly with the High Command to reorganize defensive strategies. The reaction was exactly what she expected: shock, resistance, and barely concealed anger from some quarters. "This is unprecedented," council member protested, his markings flashing deep red. "No outsider has ever held military command in our empire. It violates 1,000 years of tradition." "Tradition nearly got us all killed," replied coldly. "If you wish to prioritize tradition over survival, you are welcome to resign from the council." No one resigned, but the arguments continued for hours until Admiral stood and spoke words that silenced the opposition. "I fought in the border wars. I have commanded fleets for 20 years, and yesterday I watched a human accomplish what I thought was impossible. He did not just save the planet. He showed us that we have been fighting with one hand tied behind our backs, limited by our own assumptions. If you cannot see the value in that, then you are the ones who should resign." The council voted. The measure passed by a narrow margin, was officially appointed as strategic coordinator, answerable only to the Queen and the High Command. It was a newly created position, designed specifically for him. General surprised everyone by becoming strongest supporter. She worked with him for 16 hours a day, learning human tactical concepts and teaching him the finer points of military culture. Their partnership was strange to watch. The towering warrior with glowing markings and the small human in his simple uniform, arguing passionately about weapon placements and fleet formations. "He thinks like the enemy," explained to during one of their briefings. "That is his greatest strength. He does not ask, 'How would I attack this position?' but 'How would the attack this position?' or 'How would the or any other potential threat?' He can shift perspectives instantly. It is remarkable." And the troops, how do they respond to training under human methods? Resistance at first. No one wants to be told that the way they learned is wrong, but the results speak for themselves. In simulation after simulation, forces trained in combined human tactics outperform traditional units by significant margins. They are learning to be less predictable, more adaptable. Markings shifted to approving green. "I did not want to admit it, but your human is transforming our military into something better." "He is our human now," corrected gently, "not just mine." Bowed her head in acknowledgement. Meanwhile, found herself spending more personal time with. They began having evening meals together, talking about everything except military matters. She learned that he had a sister on Earth who was a doctor, that his favorite food was something called kimchi stew that bore no resemblance to any cuisine, that he played a human musical instrument called a guitar, and had brought one with him though he had never mentioned it. "Play for me," she asked one evening. He looked embarrassed but retrieved the instrument from his quarters. It was a simple wooden thing, worn from use. He sat and began playing, his fingers moving across the strings with the same precision he used on tactical displays. The music was strange and beautiful, patterns of sound that felt alien and yet somehow familiar. "That was lovely," she said when he finished. "Why did you never mention this before?" "You never asked, and I assumed the queen of an empire had more important things to do than listen to human music." "The queen does, but wants to know everything about the person she married." She moved closer to him on the couch, a proximity she would never have attempted months ago. "Teach me more. About Earth, about your life before this, about what matters to you." So he did. He told her about Earth's blue oceans and green forests, about cities that never slept and mountains that touched the sky, about humanity's struggle to survive its own destructive tendencies and the hope that came with reaching for the stars. He spoke with a quiet passion that made her markings glow warm colors. And she told him about their long history of expansion and conquest, which was never discussed in polite company, about the pressure of ruling an empire that expected strength but also feared change, about her mother, who had died in battle defending a border colony, and how sometimes felt she would never measure up to that sacrifice. "You saved 15 billion people last week," said quietly. "By being willing to trust someone unexpected, that is its own kind of courage. I only made the choice, you did the work. You made the impossible choice, that is always harder." He reached out and touched her hand, a gesture that felt natural now. "We did it together, that is what makes it meaningful." She intertwined her fingers with his and felt her markings shift to that soft pink color again. It was happening more often now, this involuntary show of affection. She had stopped trying to hide it. 3 weeks after the invasion, Earth sent a delegation of military advisors as promised. They arrived in a small but impressive ship, wearing uniforms similar to's. The leader was a stern woman named Commander Myra, who embraced the moment she saw him. "You made them notice us," she said in Korean, which the translation systems rendered for everyone present. "The whole galaxy is talking about what happened here. Earth is finally being taken seriously." "It was not about Earth's reputation," replied. "It was about stopping an invasion." "I know, but the effect is the same. We are no longer seen as primitive newcomers. We are seen as valuable allies with unique capabilities." She turned to and bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, Earth's government wishes to expand our alliance. We are prepared to offer military support, technological exchange, and strategic cooperation on an unprecedented scale." Studied the human commander. "What does Earth want in return?" "The same thing you want. Survival and security in a dangerous galaxy. We have seen what they are capable of. We know they will not stop with the. Eventually, they will come for Earth too. Better to face them together than alone." It was a practical answer, and appreciated the honesty. Over the following days, she worked with Commander Myra and her team to formalize new agreements. The alliance between and humanity deepened, becoming more than just a symbolic marriage but a genuine partnership. The military integration continued. Human advisors spread throughout the fleet, teaching new tactics and learning combat techniques in return. Joint training exercises revealed strengths in both approaches. Warriors learned to think more flexibly and creatively. Human forces learned discipline and advanced weapon systems. "We are creating something new," Admiral observed during one exercise. Not fully human, something hybrid that takes the best of both." "That is what true alliance looks like," replied. "Not one side dominating the other, but both sides contributing to create something neither could achieve alone." The did return, as everyone knew they would. 2 months after the failed invasion, their scouts appeared at the border. But this time, the defense was ready. Combined human forces met them with tactics they had never encountered. The result was a decisive victory that sent the fleet running. After the battle, found in the war room, studying damage reports. She came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders, a gesture of affection that would have been unthinkable months ago. "We won," she said simply. "We did, and we will keep winning as long as we remember how." He turned in her embrace to face her. "Trust, adaptation, cooperation, those are our real weapons." "I am grateful you came here," she said, meeting his eyes. "I am grateful that Earth sent you specifically. I am grateful you finally let me be more than decoration." He smiled. "Though I do not mind the formal robes sometimes, they are quite comfortable." She laughed, a sound that came more easily now than it had in years. Her markings glowed bright pink, that color she no longer tried to hide. "I have something to tell you, something personal." "I am listening." "These months together, learning to know you, learning to trust you, I have come to care for you deeply. This started as a political arrangement, but it has become something real." She felt vulnerable saying it, but also liberated. "I love you, not because you saved my empire, though I am grateful for that, but because of who you are. Your kindness, your intelligence, your patience with someone who did not deserve it." His expression softened and he pulled her closer. "I love you too. I think I have for longer than I realized. You are strong and brilliant and brave enough to change when change is needed. Those are the qualities I admire most." They kissed then, not for ceremony or political show, but because they wanted to. It was gentle and warm and perfect. When they pulled apart, rested her forehead against his. "The council has been asking when we might consider producing an heir. They worry about succession. That is a complicated subject, and humans cannot reproduce naturally. The biology is too different." "I know, but our medical technology can create genetic combinations, a child who would carry both our legacies, both our species' strengths." She pulled back to see his face. "Would you want that? A family, not just an alliance?" Was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Yes, I would want that very much. A child who represents everything this alliance could become. The living proof that different species can not just coexist but truly unite." "Then we will make it happen," felt her markings blazing with joy and hope. "Not immediately. There is still much work to do, many challenges ahead, but someday soon we will create a family as unique as our partnership. The galaxy will not know what to make of us." "Good, let them wonder. Let them see that humanity and together are stronger than anyone expected." She took his hand. "Come, General is expecting us for the evening briefing. We have new defensive positions to review." They walked together through the palace corridors, side by side, neither leading nor following but moving as equals. Servants and guards bowed as they passed, showing respect to both the queen and her consort. The whispers that had followed in the early days were gone, replaced by genuine admiration. In the war room, the command staff waited. General, Admiral, Commander Myra, and a dozen others from both species. They no longer sat on opposite sides of the table but mixed together, human and working as one unified command. "What is the status of the border defenses?" asked, taking her seat at the head of the table. Sat beside her, his position established and unquestioned now. The briefing proceeded smoothly, everyone contributing ideas and strategies. The old rigid hierarchy had given way to something more fluid, where good ideas were valued regardless of their source. It was exactly what both species needed. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, General lingered behind. She approached and extended her hand in the human gesture he had taught her. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing us a better way and for being patient while we learned to see it." Shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for being willing to change. That was the hard part." When everyone had left and stood alone in the war room, the tactical displays showed a galaxy at war, but also showed the growing strength of their alliance. More human ships joining fleets, more joint training facilities, more cooperation at every level. "Do you think we can win this war?" asked. "I think we can survive it, and then rebuild something better when it is over," gestured at the displays. "Look at what we have accomplished in just a few months. Imagine what we could achieve in years, in decades. The inhumanity could become the foundation of something new in this galaxy. Not conquest or domination, but genuine cooperation between species." "That is a beautiful dream." "Dreams are important. They give us something to fight for beyond mere survival." He turned to her. "I came here expecting to serve as a symbol and nothing more. Instead, I found purpose, partnership, and love. Those are gifts I never expected." "We both found more than we expected," agreed. "And we will keep finding more as long as we continue to trust each other." They left the war room together, walking toward their shared quarters. Outside the windows, the turn beneath them, safe for now because two unlikely partners had learned to work together. There were still a threat. The galaxy was still dangerous, but the Empire was no longer facing those threats alone. Queen had doubted her human consort. She had dismissed him, underestimated him, kept him at a distance because she could not see past her own assumptions, but had been patient. He had prepared, waited, and when the moment came, he had revealed his true power, not just his tactical genius or strategic thinking, but his capacity to change minds and build bridges between species. That was the real power humanity brought to the galaxy. Not superior weapons or technology, though those helped, but the ability to adapt, to think differently, to survive against impossible odds by refusing to give up or give in. They had conquered star systems through strength. Humanity had survived extinction through stubbornness. Together, they were becoming something that might actually change the galaxy for the better. In the royal quarters, changed out of her formal armor while made tea in the human style, they sat together on the balcony, watching three suns set in sequence, painting the sky in colors neither Earth nor the had alone. To unlikely partnerships, said, raising his cup. To true understanding, replied, touching her cup to his. They drank together, and the galaxy turned, and the future stretched out ahead of them filled with challenges and possibilities in equal measure. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything since the day revealed his true power and taught a proud empire that strength comes in many forms. And sometimes, the greatest strength is simply the willingness to trust someone unexpected.